The resolution that's actually before the House is to suspend Standing Order 148. Standing Order 148 says that when you have a committee inquiry, as in a committee inquiry that involves the House of Representatives, which a joint standing committee does, then you should probably get the result of that inquiry before you move to consideration in detail. Because the whole point of the committee inquiry is that you examine a bill in detail and come up with recommendations to improve the legislation. But what's extraordinary here, is that of all legislation, of just about anything you can think of where something might have unintended consequences, a change to the way that the Senate will be composed is just that. And yet what have we had for this process? We've had a dirty deal between the Coalition and the Greens political party, sitting up there voting in favour of this being rammed through on the second reading. You know, the new marriage of convenience in order to advantage the Greens political party and the Coalition. You know, the Greens who lecture from up on high about proper processes, about accountability, are prepared to do a deal with their spokesperson, Senator Rhiannon, you know, the person who only believes in one term for any MP, except for herself, who's been there for decades and is now, as a result of this legislation, the likelihood of a double D will be increased, and in a double D, as the only sitting Green senator from New South Wales, will be number 1 on the ticket, and we'll need one out of 12 rather than 1 out of 6. Talk about conflict of interest. She's the person responsible for the Greens on this issue. Let there be no mistake in terms of the amendments that we'll move about proper disclosure of donations, and we'll see exactly where the so-called party of principle ends up on this, because this is a disgraceful trashing of democratic process in this chamber. This suspension of this standing order that is there for very good reason, that is there to ensure that the proper processes of this parliament take place, are important for policy legislation, but to do it for legislation that is about affecting the makeup of future parliaments, not just once, not just a one-off, but for decades into the future, that will impact on the composition of the Senate of Australia, is quite frankly extraordinary. Now, we have proper processes here. We have legislation introduced on a Wednesday or Thursday. It gets adjourned. You come back the next week. You then have the party meetings, and the crossbenchers can get briefings on it if they want. You then have a debate the week after that, and you have proper processes. What we're seeing here, legislation introduced on a Monday afternoon after going through the Coalition party room, legislation that they've got to amend. And if you want evidence of why it is that you need a proper committee process, it's that they introduced legislation 2 days ago and they've got to fix it up already. It didn't last the week. And yet there are 6 amendments so far to their own legislation that has not lasted 48 hours. Well, there are real consequences behind this, and it is absolutely extraordinary. Well, this legislation doesn't relate to the JSCAM report that was done in open. This legislation relates to meetings that took place behind closed doors between the Greens and the Coalition, to advantage the Greens and the Coalition at the expense of independents and others in terms of who might want to put themselves forward. That's why this process, which is outrageous, should be rejected. That's why it's extraordinary that this is going to be rammed through the House of Reps and through the Senate with the support of the Greens. This is the worst decision since the Greens helped to knock over a price on carbon in
Order.
2009.
The member's time has expired. I call the member for